Revenge films.
My name is Nancy Williams. I live with my husband, James, and our son, Henry, in preschool. I work part-time at a diner, so after I take my son to preschool in the mornings, I work a 5-hour shift at the diner. Between raising my young son, taking care of the household chores, and working a job, I had my hands full. But I wanted to be able to save for my family's future. So with my husband's support, I do my best and go to work every day. At my part-time job, I have 1 weekday off every week, and on those days off, I often go out for lunch with the other moms. I got along well with the other moms, and every time we would have a lunch, it would be a great time. However, within the group of moms that got along well, there was one particular mom that I wasn't very fond of. And that mom was named Harriet. She was 2 years older than me and 33 years old. Whenever I would see Harriet dropping off or picking up Henry from the preschool, she was easygoing and a good person. However, it wasn't until we all started getting together for these lunches that I found out that there was a side to her that was extremely cheap and selfish. Whenever we would come to these lunches, she would always come up with some kind of reason to leave early, leaving without paying any money. This was troubling everybody. Every single time that would happen, it would mean that somebody would be stuck having to pay her part of the bill. However, eventually, she started to ask in advance for somebody specific to pay her part, and for some reason, she started asking me. I felt like I had no choice, but not once had she actually paid me back. By the time I realized it, the total amount that I had paid on her behalf had already mounted to $200. Whenever I was at the preschool, I would bring up the money that she owed me, but then she would brush me off by saying,
"Oh, come on. Please, you don't need to bring that up right here, right now. How rude."
But then, whenever I would try to collect it from her at the lunches, her response would be,
"I didn't bring any cash with me today, so let's settle this next time."
And that became the standard routine with no end in sight. This continued for some time, and it was reaching my limit, and I didn't want to pay for her anymore. That's why I decided that the next time she tried to leave without paying her part, I was going to decline paying for her anymore. And so the next day, when it came for us to leave, just as expected, Harriet got up from her seat. So I decided to confront her. "Harriet, where are you going?"
"Oh, I'm not feeling very well, so I was gonna go to the restroom."
"Can you please go after we settle the bill?"
"I'm telling you that I'm not feeling well, didn't you hear me? If I don't come back, then you can just pay for me for now, and I'll pay you back next time, Nancy."
But I wasn't going to accept that this time. So I told her that that's enough already, and I refused to pay for her. But then instead, Harriet flipped a switch on me, and she retaliated with a sour attitude. She said to me,
"Nancy, you're working a part-time job too, so you have plenty of money that you can use freely, don't you? In that case, what's the big deal about paying for my part of the bill? Don't be so cheap!"
I was working a part-time job 4 days a week in order to save money for my family, and I couldn't understand at all why I should have to use that hard-earned money for somebody that wasn't even a part of my family. Not only was Harriet being unreasonable, she was fully confident in trying to force her part of the bill onto me, and that was when I had had enough. Even though she had never once paid me back for a single one of the lunches, she already owed me hundreds of dollars at this point. I couldn't believe that Harriet was trying to make me sound like the cheap one. That was the final straw for me, and from that moment forward, I vowed that I would never pay for her again. A few days later, we were planning another lunch with the moms as usual, but then I received a call from Harriet that her child had a fever that day and that she was no longer able to join us. We were having lunch without Harriet there, and of course, the conversation turned into the money that she owed all of us.
"Hey, I've paid for Harriet a couple of times now, but she still hasn't paid me back for any of those lunches yet. Have any of you been paid back for the money that you fronted for her?"
In total, I've let her borrow more than $100 with these lunches, but I haven't received a penny back for any of it yet.
The total that I've let her borrow at this point is over $200.
"What? $200? That's pushing it. That's definitely bad. We have to do something and get her to pay us all back. This is ridiculous."
When I found out that I wasn't the only one that Harriet was borrowing money from, I was furious. It made me think that I needed to do something about this even sooner and take care of it. There was no option to not invite her to these lunches anymore. But even if we were to do that, it wouldn't get us our money back. And so, we needed to be careful about how to take action about it. We spent the rest of that lunch coming up with a plan, and we vowed to get back all of the money that we had let her borrow. But that wasn't going to be enough. The next time she tried to do the same thing, we came up with a strategy to get back at her. 1 week later, not knowing anything, Harriet showed up at the Italian restaurant where we had made the reservation. As soon as we all sat down and the lunch began, we were all having a great time as usual, talking about our kids and our husbands. Everybody acted like it was a normal lunch, and time flew by. And then, as we started to wrap up, we all paid close attention to what Harriet was going to do. Just as we expected, Harriet stood up from her seat. "Oh, Harriet, where are you going?"
My stomach just started to hurt, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
I actually just went to the bathroom, but all of the stalls were full, so why don't you wait? When I said that, Harriet looked stumped, and so she just sat back down in her seat. But then this time, she started to say that her head was hurting. When I suggested that she go to the hospital after we finished paying the bill, suddenly she started putting on the most dramatic act.
Ow, it's seriously so painful. I can't bear it. I can barely even sit still. My head hurts so much.
All of the other moms were sitting there without anybody showing any sympathy. Then Harriet said,
I need to go home straight away, and I need to take medicine for this right now.
And she tried to stand up. So this time I said, if your head hurts that much, and then what if you pass out on your way home? That's going to be even worse, isn't it? You should probably sit there and rest for a little bit before you stand up or try to go anywhere, don't you think?
Right. I don't know, but...
Harriet reluctantly sat back down in her seat, but this time, she once again started saying, my stomach is starting to hurt again. I need to go to the bathroom and fake holding her stomach.
Harriet, are you okay? Maybe it's better if you go to the hospital? It's pretty bad if your stomach and your head both hurt that much at the same time. That's definitely strange.
I'm gonna go look at the bathroom, so wait right here. I'll be right back. I got up and pretended to go to the bathroom, but instead I immediately called an ambulance. When I got back to my seat, Harriet's acting had become even more ridiculous, and I was shocked.
Ow! It hurts! I can't bear it anymore. My stomach hurts so much. I can't take it. I'll pay my part of the bill when I get back from the toilet, so I'm gonna go.
When Harriet grabbed her belongings and tried to leave the table, I made my move. Oh, Harriet, don't worry. I already called the ambulance for you, so you'll be okay now. When I said that, Harriet suddenly started to panic.
What? An ambulance? That's overdramatic. I don't need an ambulance. It's not overdramatic. You seemed like you were really suffering, and I was worried. You really shouldn't push yourself if you're feeling so ill and go to the hospital. Well, that's weird. It just seems like my headache and my stomach pain are both starting to go down. I'm starting to feel better, so there's no need for an ambulance to come. You can call them to cancel it.
But just a few seconds ago, you seemed to be in so much pain. I don't think that whatever it is would get better that quickly. Just in case, I really think that you should get on the ambulance and go to the hospital, especially with how much you were hurting.
Everybody that got there tried to stop her, and we bought enough time for the paramedics to arrive.
Oh, looks like they're here. Yes, over here. This is the person that's not feeling very well.
I got into the ambulance with Harriet as her witness, and Harriet was carried into the ambulance by the paramedics. Of course, when we got there, the doctors found that everything was normal. I explained to the symptoms that Harriet had, and so at the hospital, they took multiple x-rays and CT scans. But of course, everything came back normal. Harriet came out of the doctor's office looking quite awkward. That was when her husband came running in, but as soon as he saw Harriet standing there looking healthy, he scrunched his face.
You better not tell me you were trying to dine and dash again, Harriet!
Those were his first words. Dine and dash? What are you talking about? When I asked her husband about it, he then opened up about a problem that he was having with his wife. It turns out that in the past, every single time that Harriet would dine and dash, she would lie and say that she wasn't feeling well. She wouldn't pay and then leave the restaurant, and he told me that she was actually once arrested for it. When I heard that, I explained to him everything that Harriet had done to all of us. Her husband immediately apologized to me on the spot. He then told me that he was going to make her take responsibility for that and promised to pay us all back for all the money that she borrowed from us. Apparently, the last time that she was arrested by the police over this, her husband told her that if she ever does it again, he would divorce her. Harriet shamelessly dropped down on her knees, begging her husband for forgiveness.
Wait a minute, please! This is all a misunderstanding. I really was planning on paying everybody back. You have to believe me.
Shut up! Obviously, there's no way that I can believe you after all of this. How many times do you think this has happened?
Honey, I'm sorry. Please just consider anything but divorce. I swear I'll never do anything like this again. I promise.
That's exactly what you said last time. I can't believe you anymore. We're getting a divorce. I've had enough.
But no!
After being told her husband was going to divorce her, Harriet looked like the soul had left her body, and she dragged herself out of the hospital. After that, her husband did divorce her, and she was kicked out of the house and moved out of town. Now that she was a single mother, she was no longer able to be a full-time housewife, and in order to make ends meet while also having to pay back her debts, she's being forced to work around the clock. As for the money that she owed us, her husband fronted the payment back to all of us. Until she pays back every penny, I heard that her husband is keeping a close eye on her. As for us, ever since Harriet moved, she isolated herself from all of us, and the lunches became even more fun than before. Now that I think of that incident as a lesson that no matter how close we might be, you have to be careful with borrowing or lending money.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.